Awesome, guys. So I'm going to talk to you in this module about thought, about emotion and behavior. Now, it's probably a good idea with this module to just go through this a number of times, because sometimes, the language and I guess the process of what we're trying to really get across and the points and to really get you to start to think about how your behavior is predicated on your thought and your emotion. It can be complicated, and sometimes you can sort of lose self. So with this, the best way to go through this learning is to read a bit. And if you're not sure about what it is, just sit and ponder and reflect on it. And then once you find that you understand what we're talking about, then you can move on. And so give yourself some time to really reflect, because this is a very, very connected type of learning, this one. And we're talking about our thoughts and our thinking, and how our thought impacts on our emotion creates the behavior. So at the core of every symptom, there's always an emotional pattern, and that's triggered by a thought, which causes our body to react in a certain way. So I'm going to give you, I guess, an example. So an example could be that, let's say that you think that your partner is flirting with someone else. So first you have the thought, I think that my partner's flirting with someone, because you may see it. So you start to think that, you recognize that behavior, and you assume that that's what it is. So you've got this thought. You might find in response to that thought, you might start to feel a bit anxious or jealous. The thought of my partner is cheating on me, I can see it, I'm starting to feel anxious, I'm starting to feel jealous. That's an emotional response. Now that emotional response may solicit a type of behavior. Now, that behavior could be anger, or you could be hostile, or you could, start to become abrupt, or you might confront them. And so this is the behavior. So when we look at this emotional pattern, we had the thought, we had the emotion, and then we had the behavior. So if you're frustrated with this situation, or you're frustrated at that, I guess the one thing we need to ring true is frustration is not only going on in your outside world, but the body speaks the mind. You become defensive, you become angry. So in this situation, your body is speaking your mind. I think he or she is cheating on me. I'm getting really I'm frustrated. I'm anxious, I'm jealous. And now your body just speaks this, which is the behavior. So the thought creates the emotion, which creates the behavioral thing. So I guess every thought we have that comes through our intellect can stimulate a feeling, an emotion, a desire, and an action. And this becomes the flow. Every action, there is a reaction. It's the same as in a car situation. So someone cuts you off, you're cruising down, someone cuts you off. You have two ways to respond. You can think, what an ass. That solicits emotions of anger, and then the behavior could be jumping on your horn, you're giving him the finger, you're swearing at him out the window. Right? So that's one way you can choose to, I guess, go with that situation. We have an alternative way. When someone cuts you off, you can go like, wow, he or she's in a real hurry. That sucks, because I have all the time in the world. It must suck to be so busy and have to get somewhere so quickly that you have to do that. So the thought is changed. Therefore, my emotional response is different, and so is my behavior. So with that, we need to start to really get in tune with our thinking, because our thinking creates everything. Everything from that is a byproduct, but it starts with the thought. So thinking is any mental activity or processing of information, including learning, remembering, perceiving, believing, and deciding. I want to say that again, but I can say it a little bit slower. Thinking is any mental activity or processing of information, including learning, remember, perceiving, believing, and deciding. So if these are the 5 core structures that make up our thinking, what you can really suggest, or what you can actually state, is that our thinking and thoughts are heavily influenced by our learnings. Therefore, and the perceiving and the believing, and therefore, I guess, when we start to quantify who we are, we start to think about who we are. Who we are is not who we are right here in the moment. Who we are is built upon all these 5 stages of our life. We've all remembered things, experienced things, seen things, heard things, we perceive things, we decide on things, we believe things, that impacts on our thinking. Therefore, if all your life you've just had all these negative experiences, and you've, all these, I guess, disempowering things have happened, you're going to start to think ill of yourself, or ill of the people around you, or you're going to start to think that the world is against you. So the emotion is disempowerment, frustration, sadness, isolation, disconnect. The behavior is just lack of confidence. You're down on yourself. You become hostile. You become angry. You start to, tune out. You start to treat people like that. So this is where our thinking is really, really critical in the process. Now, the truth is, most often our thoughts are on autopilot, and we never really question the validation of the thoughts. You guys are starting off on a major, personal growth and a transformational journey. And the question is, am I worthy? Do I think that I can achieve this? Can I be a greater version of me? Is there a greater version of me? Now, these are these thoughts that you'll be questioning yourself on. And the fact of the matter is, these questions or these thoughts, they're always autopilot, and we never question them. We never go, hang on, that's ridiculous. Why wouldn't I be able to? We never do that. So the first real step to, I guess, gaining some level of control over your thoughts or thinking is to realize that you are not the thinker. You're not the thought, but rather you're being thought. Now, I want to say that again because it can seem a little bit strange what I'm saying. So you need to realize that you are not the thinker. You're not the thought. You are being thought. So what does this mean? Well, pretty much what this means is your thoughts and your thinking, they're not actually you. So what we need to do is we need to disassociate from the thought or the thinking. So when we have a bad thought, or we think that we're not good enough, or whatever it might be for you, we need to then stop and we need to say, hang on, why am I not good enough? Where's this thought coming from? What is this level of thinking that's going on? Because when you create that dissociation, you can start to question all the negative thoughts or disempowering thoughts that are coming into your mind. So what this does is this breaks the pattern of being on autopilot. Instead of just waking up each and every day saying, I'm just not worthy, like I don't think I'm good enough, or I don't think I'm attractive enough, or I don't think I'll ever be able to create my change. Then in an instant, bang, we can question that. Hang on, stop. That's not necessarily true. Why do I think that today? What's going on for me? Where does this come from? We know that's crap. I'm going to just put that aside and move on. If we don't do that, each and every day we just wake up with that same thought pattern. And it's not until we start to question the thought or the thinking that we can start to then go, well, hang on, we can disassociate from those thoughts, and we realize in an instant we can have that thought, identify that thought, swap it, change it, and then question it. So they go, well, hang on, I'm not going to think that way. I am worthy. I am good enough. I can grow. I can create a business, whatever it is for you. So the first step to really regaining control of your thinking is to start to question it. So when a thought comes in, question it. Is this thought true? Does it support me? Does it empower me? If the thought does not empower you in any way, then simply acknowledge the thought, thank it, and move on. Don't pay any more attention. You have a negative thought, acknowledge it. That's negative. Thanks for being negative. It's obviously here for some reason. It's not empowering me. I'm grateful that it's here. Next, move on. Don't pay it any more attention. This is the first step, as I said, to really starting to gain control of your thinking. Because we are not the thinking, we're not the thought. Just because I think that I'm not good enough doesn't mean that I'm not good enough. We believe it to be true and we think it to be true, but it's not necessarily true. The first step is to question that thought. So some further questions to ponder. Why do you think negative thoughts? Why do you think negative thoughts? Interesting question. Why do you allow yourself to be controlled by negative thoughts? Because we are. We have negative thoughts every day. Why is it that we allow ourselves to be controlled by that though? What is a thought? A crazy question, but what is a thought? Where does it come from? How do you draw it? What does it smell like? What does it look like? What color is it? They're strange questions, but what I'm trying to get across is it's not in the physical. It's not real. This is just made up stuff in our head. I think I'm like this. I think I'm like that, and it's not true. So if it is true, what does it look like? What color is it? What does it taste like? What does it smell like? These are some very basic questions that you may have never had asked before, but I really want you to reflect on this. So if negative thought, where do negative thoughts come from? Because if you can answer that, then you can also answer where do positive thoughts come from. And if you can answer where positive thoughts come from, that's a place that you want to stay, or that's a place that you really want to connect to. Because we want positive thoughts. We don't want to worry about the negative thoughts. What do you listen to more, positive or negative thoughts? If someone tells you you're great, do you think it? If someone tells you you're not so great, do you think it? Which one do you take hold of? Most people, they take the negative because they don't believe the positive. He or she just said that because they want something from me. He or she just said that because they're just trying to be nice. He or she just said that I'm great because they're just trying to be polite. How would it be if no, you really are great? What would that do for our level of thinking? Noting that our thought impacts our emotion and our behaviour, how much more empowering is that? Someone tells you you're great, you think, yeah, I think I really am great. Your emotional response, you're proud, you're confident, you're happy, you're contented, you're fulfilled. What do you think your behaviours are going to be? Positive, empowering behaviours, right? This is how this works. This is why it's so critical to start to think about our thinking and where it comes from. What thoughts would you rather focus on? Negative or positive thoughts? Of course, you're going to say positive thoughts, but the fact of the matter is you don't. You always focus on negative thoughts. So by the end of that, you're going to realise that thinking is really critical in your system. And I guess the other question I want to ask is how much thought have you ever given to thought? These questions we're asking about thinking, have you ever thought of them before? Now that I've mentioned it, I want you to really, really reflect in the next few days and, even the next week. When you have a negative thought, a disempowering thought, or any level of thought, what do you think about where it's come from? If you have a good thought, where did that come from? It'll be dependent on your state of mind, dependent on how much sleep you've had, alcohol, fitness, stress, you name it, foods, people you've had, contact with. These all impact on our energy, our thinking, our state of mind. And then from there, the emotional behavioural response comes out of it. So that's the truth. So I want you in the next 5 days to really look at your thinking and what influences, what type of environment are you in when you have a good thought or a bad thought. So now we're going to go through to emotion, because emotion is the second response, right? We have the thought, the emotion, and then the behaviour. So emotion means emotional movement. It's our thoughts that create our emotions. It's our emotions that create our behaviours. Emotions are burned in our subconscious, created by thought. So at the core of every stress and disease, physical emotion, we're not able to adapt to the present now. Our body reacts as though something in the past is going on now. Resultantly, these emotions take over, creating a behavioural response. So this is basically saying that emotions and memories are really severe or dramatic perceptions that are buried in our subconscious. Emotion has a different vibrational frequency, anger, happiness, etc. So when we close our eyes, and what this is basically saying that any emotional response in the past, we can solicit now. So let's just say that when you were younger, you tried to speak to some people and you mumbled and fumbled and they laughed and you felt really embarrassed. When someone then says to you, hey, I need you to do a speech, you're going to freak out. Why? You don't know why. You're just like, I can't do it, I freak out. And you're not even going to think about what happened when you were a child. But that emotional response of speaking and embarrassment, because of what happened when you were young, that still resonates here. That's still emotionally attached to who you are. So when someone says, I want you to now speak or do a speech or read something in front of an audience, you're going to just implode, because that emotional response is still buried in your subconscious, whether you realize it or not. So negative emotions store all through the anatomy of the body, impacting the emotional and physiological functioning of the body. And this is the truth of this. This is why we talk about emotional DNA and say how some people just have, emotional trauma passed to them in their DNA as a child. So they don't even know, or they're not even aware of some of these things that exist deep in their subconscious, but it exists. Other people are aware of it. Other people who've gone through major life trauma or major life incidents or events in their life, they have this trauma still in their subconscious. So that's why it's really, really important that we sort of cleanse ourselves of this, because any trapped emotions are the source of everything that causes difficulties in life. I want to say that again. Any trapped emotions that have never been previously dealt with appropriately, they are the source and cause of difficulties in our life. They keep us from being within our defined nature. Once we're aware of this, we can move this energy. But the fact of the matter is, like when we talk about transformational growth or personal growth, if we're still holding on to all these subconscious traumas and emotional responses in our body from the past, then we can never really liberate ourselves and be free. So we really need to go to that place where there's been hurt and sadness and trauma, and we really need to accept it, be grateful for it, and then just pass it, just move on. Because unless we do that, it's going to stay trapped in our system. So how do I explain that in simple terms? I guess emotions are the end product of past experiences in your life. If you can change your action, you can change your experience. That's the truth. We remember experiences better because we remember how we feel or how we felt. When I spoke in front of those children and I really mumbled, I felt embarrassed. I was humiliated. It was the worst feeling. I just wanted to just crawl into a ball or just sink into a hole. I felt miserable. I was so ashamed of myself. So now naturally when someone says, hey, I want you to do this, bang, that emotional response of just feeling humiliated, embarrassed, we solicit that now. And we just get that feeling of overwhelm and dread. And this is what happens when we don't deal with it in the past. So trapped negative emotions that have not been dealt with can create ongoing health issues. The leading cause of physical pain is the storing of negative emotional molecules in our body. A signal from different points of the anatomy that the emotions that you've been feeling is storing here, causing chaos and discomfort. You need to switch it up, go from positive form of that emotion. So for example, like, we'll talk about anger and the liver. So anger, the emotional response, is actually stored in our liver. When people say, drinking alcohol makes me angry or makes people angry. I mean, yes, there's a sugar content and sugar can make you hypo, but the liver breaks down alcohol. If the liver is working overtime to break down your alcohol, the emotional response is anger, right? Or people, when they drink, they get angry. No, their liver is working overtime. The liver is breaking down. Emotional response attributed to the liver is anger, and this is where anger comes from. This is where anger is also stored. So our major bodily organs store all types of emotional responses. It's really, really fascinating, really, really interesting. And this is when we talk about the real connectedness of who we are. When we look at our organs and the food groups and the colours of the rainbow, and the 7 chakras, we look at all these things and everything is interrelated, intertwined. The more you research this and go into it, it becomes fascinating. So on that, I guess right now, I want you to just take 30 seconds, take a minute. And what I want you to do is I really want you to just write some negative emotions that may be dormant or trapped in your body. These emotions that you've never dealt with. It could have been through, a severe breakup. It could have been through, your mum and dad, or it could have been through some violence, or it could have been through an accident, or it could have been through bullying, or it could have been through a death in the family, or just whatever it is for you. I really want you to just go to that place. And for some of you, there may not have been anything, and that's really fortunate. For some of you, there may be, hundreds of things. And then you're sort of thinking, how do I pinpoint it? Well, it's not so much that we pinpoint it, but we need to identify as much as possible. Identify that time where this is good. Identify what this is meaning for you now. Identifying what you're holding on to and what that's stopping you from becoming. And we need to accept it. Because the path to healing is acceptance of the past. I had a client once, and she was incredible. She was young and she had a terrible upbringing with her parents, and she was crying on the phone to me, and she said, Rob, I can't move on from the past. I can't do it. I want to be my greatest infinite self, and I really want to rock this, and I really want to do that. I'm so committed. I said, but you're never going to succeed. And she said to me, Rob, I just want to be happy. I want to be able to love self, and I want to be happy, and I just want to be contented with who I am. And I'd say, but you can't, because you're holding on to all this pain of the past, that you're holding on to all this hatred, all this anger and frustration of your past. And she goes, yeah, but Rob, I've tried, and I just can't get over it. I can't let go of it. I said, there's one thing you haven't done. She's like, what? I said, all right, you just promised me that you're going to do anything to get over this. And she goes, well, of course I will. I said, so whatever I say you have to do, you will do this. And she goes, of course I'm going to. I said, okay, what you need to do is you need to pick up your phone and you need to ring your mum. And you need to ring your mum and you need to say to your mum, hey mum, I forgive you for what you did to me. I know that you were just doing the best that you could. I know that a happy, healthy mum wouldn't treat her daughter like this. And because of that, I forgive you. And she's like, I can't do it. I'm not doing that, Rob. I said, well, this is your only path to healing, to let go of that, to just identify these trapped emotional responses and to really deal with it, because otherwise you're never going to deal with it. And she'd been in a world of hurt. She's like, Rob, I can't do it. And she's crying, I can't do it. And I said, that's great. And I said, I can't help you then. I said, because if you're not prepared to do this, you're not going to get the results. And that's the truth. And it was hard, man. Of course I wanted to help her. But the one thing that she needed most was the one thing that she was never going to do. And that one thing is the one thing that was going to liberate her forever. And she said to me, so you're telling me that if I don't ring my mum, you're not going to work with me? And I said, that's exactly what I'm telling you. And I said, I'm telling you that with a little bit of, angst, because I want to help you. But the result that you need is to heal what happened in your past. You're only going to do that when you forgive this person. And she just said, Robert, I can't do it. And I just wished her luck. I said, okay, cool. I texted her the next day. Hey, how's things? I just really want you to find that strength in your heart and make sure you do what you need to do to liberate yourself, because otherwise you're going to be stuck forever. 2 days later, she rang me in absolute tears. And I thought something really, really bad had happened. And I said, what's wrong? She goes, oh, Rob, she goes, these aren't tears of pain anymore. They're not tears of sadness. And I was kind of confused. I was like, what's going on? She goes, I spoke to my mum and she hung up the first time and I rang her back on a private number. And before I could say anything, I didn't say, Mum, quick, I need to speak. I just said, I love you, Mum, I forgive you. I was blown away. And I said, then what happened? She goes, there was just this big silence on the phone. And she said, Mum just cried. And she goes, I never heard my mum cry before. And I was like, wow. And it was a massive moment in her life. And all she said to her was, Mum, I love you, I forgive you. And she said, I know you were doing the best that you can. And I know that, you have regret. And I know if you had your time again with me, you would do it differently. And that was it. That's all she said to her. And she rang me literally a minute or two after, just in this crazy mess of just courage and empowerment. And I was blown away. You have those moments with clients where you you just feel so amazing for them. Like you just feel so proud of what they've done. And so it's one of the best feelings in the world. And she goes, Rob, you have no idea how I feel. And I had to say to her, you're right, I don't. However, fuck, I am so proud of what you've just done because you've done one of the most courageous, ballsy things in this world. And she felt amazing. And she says, Rob, now we're rocking this journey. Me and you, we're doing it. And we did, and she's crushing it. You know, she then started a business. She started to work with other young adolescents who are struggling with dealing with things in their past. She can now coach and mentor this because she went through it herself. And that's the truth. She had all this emotional trauma trapped deep within, and her only path to going forward was to forgive and forget. And that's a really difficult thing. It's difficult for someone to ask someone else to do that who I haven't had that experience. So it's even more difficult for me to ask someone to do that when I've never had to do that in that type of essence. I've been through things myself, but not on that scale. But it was an amazing moment. And I guess the one reflection I want you to think now is these issues, pain, sadness, frustration, trauma of your past. I want you to go to this place. I want you to have the same strength and courage. And I want you to ask yourself the question, you know, how much longer do I want to hold on to this? Is this allowing me to be? Because if you're holding on to it, you're not going to allow yourself to be who you need to be in this world because there's still going to be something that's holding you back. You deserve to be liberated. And when you do, I can't tell you what it feels like, but I can tell you some of the experiences of my clients, and it's one of the most amazing experiences in the world. Why do I know that? Because I had one of the most experiences in the world, experiencing them go through this. So I need you to really, really reflect on that. Truth is, with our emotions, if we allow emotions to last for hours or days, we call that a mood. Why are you in such a bad mood? You know, we say that. This event happened 5 days ago, and what happens is I'm in a bad mood because I'm still memorizing my emotional reaction to when this bad mood started. So something happens, we get in a bad mood for a few days, and we're just holding on to that emotional response or reaction to that mood. And we do it for 5 days. If we keep the same emotional reaction for weeks or months, this becomes a temperament. You've all heard that. They have such an angry temperament. They're such a bad-tempered person. This is memorizing that emotional response now over months. If we keep those experiences running for years on end, that's called a personality trait. So it makes sense in order to change our personality or some aspect of ourself, we have to look at some of the emotions that we have memorized that are stored in our body. So a personality trait is memorizing that emotion over years. This just now becomes who we are. Because we created this personality trait, the one thing that I know is that we can uncreate it and we can recreate a new personality trait. So it's really, really important with emotion to really get in tune with what's going on. Because these ongoing memories that we relive that create the mood, the temperament, and then the personality trait, they can have major, impacts on our health. They can just crush us for years and years and years and years and years. Our health, disease. We all know about stress and emotional response to stress. Stress is an emotional response, right? Stress is a result of 80% of disease and illness in our body. So when people say, Rob, I want to become healthy, what do? I say, reduce the stress. People go, that sounds crazy. I said, yeah, I know it's not sexy. But that's the truth. Stress is a result of 80% of disease and illness in our body. So we need to take it seriously. So I mentioned before with anger and the liver. So a couple of the other ones, how, the emotional response of anger is attributed to the body organ liver. So we've got joy, which is associated with heart. Fear is with the kidneys. Grief is with the lungs. And pensiveness is with the spleen. So with that, I want you to think about what you're holding on to and what that's meaning for certain bodily functions or organs in your body, because it's having a detrimental effect. So I hope that I've been able to explain the thinking and emotion and how important that is with our behaviour. The thought creates the emotion response creates the behaviour. So it even really goes into, we talk about placebo and nocebo. So placebo being the mere expectation of something is helping you. We then start to believe that it is, so therefore our body becomes healed. Now we know that, the mere thought or mere expectation that a drug or medicine is going to create a better health. It creates a physiological and biological reaction that ensures your body and mind will be healed as a result of this pure expectation. The truth is, I've said this before, our mind doesn't know what's true and what's not. So it's better to trick our mind to make us feel happy, healthy, inspired, and empowered than, disempowered, unhappy, and uninspired. Because the brain's not going to go, hey, Rob, nah, you're tricking me. I know better. Our brain doesn't do that. So it's better that we give our brain the information that it needs to get the best out of us. Truth of the matter is, placebo releases a chemical reaction in our body 40,000 times more powerful than heroin. Purely the thought that this really works creates this change in our reality. Do you know how powerful that is? It releases a chemical 40,000 times more powerful than heroin. Purely by the fact that we believe that this change is creating a new reality or a better reality. It's massive. So you hold this thought to be true, and then your body sends out this chemical more powerful than heroin to heal your body. This is in us. We don't have to spend money on it. We don't have to buy it. We don't have to go to the shops. It's in us now. There's so much to us that we don't know. And the big thing about this learning is I want you to really, really go and explore more. I want you to find out more about who you are. Because the power of our mind, our belief, and our creativity to create the power of healing based off what you hold to be true in your background, you know, what you're thinking, your thoughts, and you have the ability to heal self purely by just releasing this biochemical compound in your body. Like it's an amazing thing. So I really want you to take this seriously, and I want you to go there because, again, placebo, it's not even true. We're making this up, and it can have such a profound healing effect on our body. I mean, so does nocebo, though. So nocebo is the opposite. Placebo being the thought or mere expectation that something is doing us well or getting us better is. Nocebo is the same. So the thought that something can destroy you or your body, you can create that reality purely by the thought. It's crazy. And I guess I was doing some lecturing once, and I spoke about the word cancer. I said to the people, I said, when I say the word cancer, what do you think of? And someone said death sentence. I was like, wow, that's quite profound. And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, okay, who thinks of cancer as a death sentence? And everyone raises their hand. And I was like, I said, so basically what I'm going to say is simply the word cancer is a nocebo. Because if you guys had just raised your hand and said that cancer is a death sentence, if you went down the street, or not down the street, if you went to the doctor said, oh, you have a form of cancer, straight away you're saying death sentence. Now, we've all heard that. You know, Jo went to hospital when she was just having headaches. She came out that she had brain tumor or cancer, and then within 2 weeks, her body just gave up, and she died. Now, how would it be if we didn't call it cancer? If we called it just a slight illness? I wonder what would happen for the rate of death or the mortality rate associated with cancer if we didn't call it cancer. Because what happens is we then have or 90% of people with this type of cancer, they die. So now we've got the big nocebo in the word cancer, and now we've got a statistic attributed, 90% of people die. We don't go, hey, 10% of people survive. Yeah, I'm going to be the 10%. We just go 90% or 80% die. Therefore, I'm going to die. So what happens? Yeah, you create this reality. Why? The mere expectation that you're going to be destroyed as a result creates this reality. So it's really, really powerful stuff. I guess think of indigenous culture. So in indigenous culture in Australia, Aboriginals, they had the pointing bone. So the mere thought that someone has pointed a bone at you would cause just your body to absolutely implode. And it's the mere expectation because you believe it to be so. So if someone points this bone at you, your body just packs up illness and then death can result. So what's happening is you're taking all this information and you're translating it into a reality. You know, cancer, bang, you relinquish just any will to live and to stay strong because of the word cancer. And then there's the mortality rate and you just, you pack up and you die. The statistic itself is a nocebo. So just as much as we talk about, placebo and how we can create the expectation of healing in our world, we can also create the nocebo effect, which is like we can create that negative reality in our world. So it's really, really important to start to think about what we're telling our body, what we're telling our brain, because the truth is nothing happens in the mind without it happening in the body. The body is the mind is the body. And it's really, really profound. Now, I am going to read something. I don't like normally reading things on a live or on a recording, but I really want to read this because I read it I think it was in Deepak Chopra, a book from Deepak Chopra a long time ago. And I read it and I had no idea what it said. And I read it and I'm like, what is this? And I read it and I couldn't understand it. And I just wrote it down because I knew it was really important, but I just couldn't understand it. I couldn't quantify it. I couldn't break it down. But it's really, really important. So I want to read it to you twice. And what I want you to do is I want you to reflect on it and just go through it. So it's about the body at the cellular level. So when you go beyond the cells, you end up with molecules. Go beyond the molecules and you end up with atoms. These atoms are not material objects, they are particles. And the particles are not material objects either. They are fluctuations of energy and information in a huge void of energy and information. You get so far beyond the facade of molecules that you start ending up in a cloud of nothing. You go beyond that cloud of nothing and you are left with absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing is the something that is. The essential raw material of the universe in non-material. The essential stuff of the universe is non-stuff. But it's not just non-stuff. It's thinking non-stuff. Now when you first hear that, you're like, what the hell is he saying? And when you read it, you're not going to be sure either. But take the time to really reflect on that. It took me a while to really, I guess, go through that. And when I started to go through it, it just bits and pieces, I sort of chunked it down. So instead of reading it as a whole, I would just take 2 lines and break it down. And then I'd represent what that meant for me, or I'd create my own, interpretation or vision of that so I could really understand it better. And it's really, really profound. So I really want you to go through that. So when we talk about the thought, emotion, and behavior, I guess the big factor, the big punch of this really comes down to the fact that whatever we focus on becomes our reality. And that's the truth. From a biochemical relationship and a mindset focus. So I want to say that again. Whatever we focus on becomes our reality. Thought, emotion, and behavior. So for example, on a roller coaster, if my experience at a deeper level is that a roller coaster is fun, then our body makes these interleukins. And at the core then, we're having fun, right? Because we have the thought, it's going to be fun. We have the emotion, the behavior. This was epic. Verse, if your interpretation is terror, frightening, and you're really afraid to go on a roller coaster, then you make cortisol and adrenaline, which destroy your immune system over a prolonged period of time because you're stressed, you're frustrated, you're scared, you're nervous. So in that instant, that on a roller coaster, you solicit these responses. Your body goes into like acute stress response mode. Our immune system shuts down. All these things shut down. And if we don't snap out of that, we stay stressed for a longer period of time. We start to put on weight. Our major bodily organs aren't working, functioning. Our irrational brain takes over. Therefore, our decision making is impaired. All these things happen. We created that reality due to interpreting the experience as something. The experience isn't anything but what you think of that experience. So I want to say that again. The experience of an event or the interpretation of an event is not the actual event. You perceive it to be an event. You perceive it to be something. But that's what you are creating. You're creating that reality. So if you want to change the experience, you can in an instant if you choose to. If you want to change the experience, you can in an instant if you choose to. I see a roller coaster and say, this is going to be horrible, frightening, scary, I'm going to hate every second of it. That's what's going to happen. And you're going to create stress. Thought, emotion, behavior, right? Or you can look at it and go, it's going to be really challenging, but I'm pumped. It's going to be cool. I'm going to grow as a result. I may not like it, but I'm going to grow. This is something big for me. I'm going to conquer a fear. And what happens? You solicit this response, you grow. So I want you to think about all the events in your life. What do you avoid due to the interpretation of the perceived experience of how horrible it's going to be? It could be speaking on stage. It could be doing a Facebook Live. It's going to be so horrible. I'm so scared. I'm so nervous. And it's going to really suck. Of course it's going to. So what are you avoiding? What are you not doing right now because of this perceived idea of what it's going to feel like? Does this interpretation limit your growth and success? If it does, what will you do about it? It's a pretty long module. There's lots of learnings. There's lots of, information that I really, really want you to, reflect on, because our thinking, that's the first point, and the thought is, the first point of what happens and the emotional responses triggered in our body to then what happens with our behavior. So I really want you to reflect on the first thing we said, that, you're not the thinker, you're not the thought. So just because you have those thoughts or thinking doesn't mean that that's who you are. So the first step is to really question those thoughts. Question, what does this mean? Where's it coming from? Why do I think like this? Because if you can then, bang, just hit it there and then, you can then disassociate from being on autopilot and just having these bad thoughts coming in all the time, because you can start to question those thoughts. So that's one of the first steps. So I just want to run through 6 or 8 key aspects of that now. So nothing happens in the mind without it happening in the body. At the core of every symptom, there is an emotional pattern triggered by a thought, which causes our body to react in a certain way. Emotions are the end product of past experiences. If you can change your action, you can change your experience. That's the truth. Realize that you are not the thinker or the thought, but rather you are being thought. Therefore, the key to mastery is to question all that does not serve you. Everything. Anything that doesn't serve you, you need to start to question it. You need to live by what does serve you. The placebo effect is due to people's mere expectations of getting better. It releases a chemical 40,000 times more powerful than heroin. This chemical rests in you right here, right now. You have 24 hours a day access to it, and it doesn't cost you a thing. The mere expectation that something is going to heal you and do you good releases a chemical 40,000 times more powerful than heroin. You need to start to tap into this. The thought that something can destroy your body can create that reality. That's the truth. The word cancer, the nocebo effect. The mere expectation that something's going to be bad or cause damage, it does. And lastly, what we focus on becomes our reality, from a biochemical relationship and a mindset focus. It's a really key one. What we focus on becomes our reality. Is your world a playground? Is it filled with love? Does the world here to support you? Is it a magical place where you just thrive and you live and you love and you succeed and you just rock it? Or is the world a scary, horrible place where there's anger and violence and hostility and there's just lying and deceit? Whatever version you create for yourself, this becomes the reality that you're living. There's real power and truth to that. So at the end of this learning, I want you to really, really reflect on what's going on for you, your thinking, your emotional responses. You know, Rob, I'm angry all the time. Okay, let's go there. Think about that. I'm just so frustrated. I'm so stuck. Okay, these are all, behaviors that are triggered from an emotional response from something that's happened in our time, in our life at some stage or another. Until you start to deal with that at a really deeper, connected level, we might take small steps forward, but we're still going to be held back by what's happened in our past. That's the truth. And I know it's painful, and I know you don't want to go there, but this is where your growth, this is where you can really start to unlock and unleash your true potentiality. This is the key to unlocking your future. This is what's going to liberate you to make sure you can go forward without restriction. This is a really massive module, and I want you to really pay attention because this is where your growth lies.